excited today to have with us Mariya Navitsky. Mariya is an unbelievable human being. She really caught my attention because of the amazing things that she's doing with her clients. Her social media channel is amazing. She'll tell you all about it. Let me tell you a little bit about Mariya. She's an incredible human being. She has this hugely inspiring story of juggling a high level of an engineering career with a family alongside the constant pursuit of what she thought was achieving optimal levels of health, but ended up leading to burnout and physical ailment. This was a really good lesson for her. She turned her life around when she began studying the HYPOXiX method. This is a breathing method, and she'll tell you all about it. She learned how to properly oxygenate her body and create balanced health and wellness programs that brought her back to vitality. She has turned her own studies and discoveries into her career and would like to share them with you. We're so lucky. Her current work is focused on overall development and mindset. Breathwork plays a major role in her practice as she sees it as the easiest and most significant catalyst for shifting the body and mind for the upgraded neural circuitry that we desire to implement in our lives. Her goal is to help her clients cultivate more energy, mind clarity, and fulfillment in life. I mean, everyone who's listening right now wants mind clarity, energy, and fulfillment. I mean, who doesn't? This is so incredible, and we're so lucky to have you here with us. Hi, Mariya.
Hi, AJ, and what an honor to be on your show. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Oh, I mean, the honor is all mine, is all ours. This is so exciting. So I have so many questions for you, but let me start out with, tell me a little bit about your background and what led you to deciding to make these big changes in your life, a big career change. I know I read in your bio that you had a very intense, probably high pressure career as an engineer, raising a family. Any young mother knows how intense that is when you're in that career building phase of your life and you have young kids and you're just trying to do it all and trying to figure out a way to not only do it, but not get super stressed and not get sick while you do it, but being so determined. And so give me a little story about your background and that transition that you made.
Well, I have always been a very sensitive person, but I was trained to become a heavily logical person that was striving in her career and education and all parts of my life. I wanted to be perfect. And this is what led me to burnout. This is what brought me to feeling hopeless in my life. Not only in my career was striving and I felt like everything was good in the family, but at the same time, I had a feeling of everything falling apart because I was falling apart on the inside. I lost the sense of myself and my body started falling apart literally, especially after giving birth and going through the post-pregnancy hormones and dealing with an endless list of health problems. I felt like I got to a point where I didn't even think I could last that much longer. And eventually it got me to a point of needing to change something in my life. It wasn't even a choice anymore. In order to survive, I had to do something. So I went on a search for a better life, for a better health. And I dived into holistic treatments, into conventional treatments, you name it. I've tried it all out there, all kinds of diets, all kinds of exercises. And nothing seemed to make a difference for me until I tried the HYPOXiX method, which was introduced to me. And I can get into that a little bit deeper later in our conversation. But that's what truly sparked the difference in my body to begin shifting my not only physical well-being, but also emotional and mental well-being from a complete burnout and malfunctioning towards a life that I had created for myself now that is beyond my dreams, beyond anything I could ever imagine for myself. And since that time, I got on a path, on a very meaningful path of helping other women achieve the same thing, because this is not a life to be in this survival mode all the time. I want women to understand the connection to their bodies, to the connection to their health, to their emotional wellness, and actually live this life feeling more fulfilled and energetic and not feel like you're simply being, but you're living your life, you're enjoying your life. And that's why I'm here today.
Absolutely. And I love, I love so many points that you just made. You talked a lot about the Buteyko method and how that really shifted your perspective and shifted your methodology of training, and I think has influenced you a lot. Can you talk a little bit about what it was about first of all, tell us for those members of the audience who don't know, what is the Buteyko method and why was it so transformational for you, and how was it introduced to you? I'm really curious.
First of all, I would never even consider that breathing could make a difference in our bodies, as big of a difference that it made for me and for so many other people out there. So at first I was kind of hesitant about it, but because I was so hopeless, I decided to give it a try. And what I've noticed is once I began to practice, I actually started feeling more energy. I got myself to a point that I couldn't even do anything in the kitchen for longer than 10 minutes. I had to crush. I was so fatigued. And after practicing it only for just several days, I felt like my energy was coming back to me. And most of all, I've noticed when I was doing those Buteyko breath holds, and all it is you are working on improving your balance of carbon dioxide and oxygen within the body. And this is a very important balance to upkeep within your body, because when you breathe a lot, you send a message to your body that it doesn't need to be doing much in order to deliver that oxygen, because a lot of it is coming in. And as a result, it kind of loses that ability of delivering those oxygen molecules from the red blood cells to the rest of the cells of the body, including your heart and your brain. And you become very sensitive to having any carbon dioxide in your body, which means that you become very sensitive to even holding your breath for longer than 10, 20 seconds. And that's a very not so good indicator, because the lower the amount of time that you can hold your breath, the more of an indicator it is that you're not doing well physically, emotionally, and mentally. So when you begin to train your body to not be so sensitive to carbon dioxide, you're improving your oxygen delivery pathways for your heart, for your brain, for the rest of the cells. As a result, they begin to rejuvenate. And in fact, one of the misconceptions that people have is when you hold your breath, you're depleting your oxygen in the body. But in reality, it's the opposite. You're improving the way that your body delivers that oxygen from the lungs to the rest of the parts of the body. So for me, when I began to practice it after a couple of weeks, I started doing a breath hold in order to, again, normalize the carbon dioxide and oxygen in the body. And I felt like there was this film that was covering my mind, and it was lifted from my head. This is the best way that I can explain it to me. But for me, that was the aha moment. That's when I realized that I actually had brain fog. It wasn't simply the fact that I couldn't concentrate. It wasn't simply the fact that I couldn't think straight anymore, and the fact that I was so depressed and anxious. It was like this film that was covering my brain, literally. And when I pushed the carbon dioxide levels enough within my body, that kind of pushed the oxygen throughout the body and opened up my mind. And to me, that was huge. I could not believe the difference that I felt. And same with my heart. I used to experience irregular heartbeat and so many other issues. And I don't remember last time I was worried about it, when just several years ago, I thought that would be it for me, my heart and all the other health problems. So for me, that gave me the confidence in my health, but also in my mind clarity, in my emotions. It gave me the tools to help myself in difficult situations. And that's when I began to think more clearly, and I began to implement those techniques and learn hundreds of other techniques, and kind of putting all the pieces together to create the program that I have now.
It's so fantastic. I love so many points that you just made. I love that you talked about that lift of brain fog in terms of elevation of your blood carbon dioxide. And it's subtle, but these subtle changes in carbon dioxide really do make those changes in the oxygenation of, as you mentioned, of your muscles. I talk about this with my clients who I train to slow their breathing down in conjunction with their workouts, and also add in some breath retentions if they are ready for it, because it's just unbelievable how we can also work on our endurance of our musculoskeletal system and improve that because of increased oxygen delivery to the myoglobin. It's so profound that more individuals don't know about this. I'm so thankful that someone like you is teaching this to your clients. It's wonderful. And I love what you said about brain fog and that lift of the brain fog. I put a huge emphasis on the cognition piece of performing carbon dioxide tolerance training in conjunction with mobility and with pattern training with the feet, even some light dance training with the extended exhales and even the breath holds. And it's interesting because then we're also not only raising our carbon dioxide levels and our carbon dioxide tolerance, but we're also temporarily lowering our blood oxygen to varying levels, anywhere between 90, 93 all the way down to 80, which I did my graduate work in altitude training, HYPOXiX training, and also voluntary breath control. And so I'm actually working on a study right now that's happening in Long Island where they're looking at the effects of the hypoxic breathing on a couple of elements on body composition and strength and basal metabolic rate. So it's really in the world of exercise science, but it's profound to me how many effects, not only the raised carbon dioxide levels in the blood, but also that lowered blood oxygen and how that also increases delivery of oxygen to the brain. I have several clients who have altitude chambers in their gyms. I train in Manhattan. I think you know that. And it's really interesting because a lot of them on the Upper East and Upper West Side, they're now feeling so much more energized and so much more. It's not only like an elite athlete would train at altitude to increase their red blood cells and increase their oxygen efficiency. We all, that's been studied for decades and decades. We understand why that works, but there's something else in addition. And the cognitive piece is really interesting. I think that's something that really interested me when I started doing the research, when I was getting my master's, looking at, wow, that is interesting that we can improve cognition and even work with individuals who have cognitive decline and Alzheimer's by performing this hypoxic training. And now you're helping to teach me, and the Buteyko method talks a lot about, and the carbon dioxide levels also, as they raise in the blood, also increases that cerebral blood flow. It's so fascinating. And so, how much have you leaned into that cognition piece? Clearly, when you're helping a woman through burnout, emotional burnout, there's a lot of relationship to brain training, autonomic nervous system training, central nervous system training. We're training it all. But what kind of approaches do you take in terms of the cognitive piece with your clients?
Are you familiar with? Well, you're probably familiar with control pause, right?
That is that pause at the end of the exhalation.
Yeah.
I'm not a master of the Buteyko method, but I was definitely inspired by any reading that I did of Buteyko when I was getting my master's. And that's something that, really lit up my brain in terms of looking at the correlation between altitude training and that Buteyko breath. Yeah. So so for the listeners who don't know what that control pause is, and Mariya can definitely expand on this, is the pause in the breath at the end of an exhalation. Mm-hmm. But you can talk a little more about the specifics of that.
So the simple tool, and for me, coming from the engineering background, for me it was really important to have some kind of gauge, something that I could measure against. And this was my introduction into the breath work. I didn't want to do simply like some kind of holistic breathing techniques because I didn't understand it. I was so logical about everything that I needed some logic in my practices. And that has shifted quite a bit. I had opened up my mind to so many other to the energy work. I'm not sure what kind of audience you have, but the more you open up your mind to new aspects of well-being, of of our bodies, the more you understand that energy is within us. Energy is in everything we do. And that's where the balance between the two brain hemispheres comes into play. But anyway, getting back into my story, at that time, I was strictly logical and I needed some kind of measuring device to help myself. And for me, that control pause, that gave me what I needed. It showed me what my overall health level was in the beginning and how it progressed over time. And just like you said, all it is you take a breath in and take a breath out, relax. You're not forcing it out, and you hold your breath until the first level of discomfort. And the more you practice, the more you will understand where your specific level of discomfort is. You just have to make sure you stop at the same time each time. So that's how you measure your control pause. And it's going to be pretty consistent for the most part. It will shift throughout the day depending on what you eat, what kind of stresses you're going through, and so on. But still, you know your body and you know when to measure it, and you can gauge your well-being through it. So for me, that was something that I could use to help myself and see the results. The better I felt, the more my control pause increased. And this is something that I do with my clients as well. For somebody that is heavily, chronically stressed out and overwhelmed and feels like they're burned out, this is something that they need to try, is to see how their overall level of well-being is. This is a good indicator of your body asking for help. If your control pause is pretty low, that means that no matter how much you try to meditate or do whatever practices that other people are suggesting to you, it's just going to be too difficult for you. Your body is not ready for it yet. You need to prepare your body for this extra work. So that's where we actually have to start practicing the breath holds and working on your breath throughout the day to make sure that you normalize your breathing patterns and breathe like a person is supposed to be breathing. And that also helps you handle the stress as well. So once you normalize your breathing somewhat to improve your control pause, that's when you open up your brain capacity to go further and do more work on your body and the mind. And that's when we get into the mind reprogramming and so on. So not necessarily everybody's going to be doing the breath holds and all that hard work that Buteyko practices require. But in some cases, this is absolutely necessary in order to move on, because our bodies are overloaded with stress on the physical level, on the physiological level. So we have to break through those neurological pathways of stress and begin to release that from our bodies.
It's so interesting that the correlation between being able to perform a breath retention and not panic, and that correlating with a person's resting state of anxiety. And I tell this to also my clients who I teach the extended exhales and even breath retentions. And I have a progressive breath retention program where we start with no breath holds and then we add short breath holds at the conclusion of an 8-second exhale. It gets pretty intense. And, and it's interesting because I many times have clients ask me, what is it about the improvement in CO2 tolerance and the reduction in anxiety? And of course, I'm not, I'm certainly not a brain scientist. I mean, I've been studying breath control and, HYPOXiX training for years. And, I have a couple of answers for them, but you may have other answers that, that you teach your clients. And, one, it seems like the chemoreceptors in the body, there's a relationship between the sensitivity of the chemoreceptors in the body. And for those who don't know, who are listening, the chemoreceptors are the receptors in the body that sense the levels of carbon dioxide in the body and will send a signal to us, right? When they sense the rise in carbon dioxide levels. Now, generally, if you're holding your breath and you hold your breath for a certain period of time and you feel the urge to take an inhalation, those are your chemoreceptors sending a trigger to a signal ultimately to your brain that you must take an inhalation. Now, do we need to take an inhalation after 10 seconds of holding the breath? Certainly not. Are we depriving our bodies of oxygen? We're not. And as Mariya has been explaining, actually, if we do lightly lower the oxygen levels in our blood, not to a dangerous level, but a very slight level, as if we're altitude training, and we also raise the CO2 levels, actually, we oxygenate our organs and also our muscles even more greatly. So it's this really interesting counterintuitive process. And so generally, when I'm describing to someone why they may feel less anxiety throughout the day because of this, well, it's because one, your chemoreceptors are becoming less sensitive, which actually is, I know it seems counterintuitive, but it's a good thing, because there's several places in the body that have chemoreceptors. One place is actually an area of the brain called the locus coeruleus. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Maybe you know. Again, not a brain scientist here. I actually was a Broadway dancer before all of this. So. And so that area of the brain actually has a high level of chemoreceptors. That area of the brain is also in charge of sending the signal to the adrenals to create, to shoot noradrenaline into the body. And so that's really fascinating, because there was one study that I was reading that was talking about the relationship between the hyperactivity of that area of the brain, let's just call it the LC for now, and high levels of stress. Individuals who suffer from ADHD may have overactivity of that area of the brain, maybe even other areas of the brain. And so I wonder if other areas of the brain also have a high level of chemoreceptors. And so what the study was talking about is that area of the brain has a high level of chemoreceptors. So if they're always getting triggered because we haven't trained our chemosensitivity, or we haven't trained our CO2 tolerance, or or raised our CO2 threshold, then it may be that area of the brain is in hyperdrive, and it's sending too much adrenaline throughout the body. Now, I don't know. I mean, that was one study. I don't know how much that's been talked about, or if you've heard of any theories like that, or what other theories you may have as to why the body at a resting state tends to be less triggered by general daily stressors when we raise our tolerance to carbon dioxide with this training.
At a resting state specifically, or?
I think at a resting state specifically, because that's, I think, what I've experienced, clients having, definitely perceiving this from the carbon dioxide training. They perceive that they're just less stressed. And they ask, what is the correlation between having a higher and improved tolerance to carbon dioxide and feeling less stressed throughout the day, and I don't always have a direct answer. I mean, of course, I'm learning as I go as well. But that was just one particular paper that I read as to, that really helped to clarify one possibility as to why we may be feeling less stressed during the day when we raise our carbon dioxide level. Just walking around, like dealing with our boss, dealing with our kids.
I see. Yeah, and I absolutely love how deeply you get into it. I love doing research myself.
I can't help it. I think you're the same way. Like, I need the science, I need the data, and then I'll go the metaphysical. Then I'll go outside the data. But first, I need the data, to tell me why I should be doing this, how much, what, quantify it, the whole thing.
But I also got an easier answer for you. We need oxygen. Our brain needs oxygen. Our hearts need oxygen in order to function well. And when the balance of CO2 and oxygen in the body is not as it's supposed to be in a healthy body, and in fact, you mentioned working in Manhattan, that's probably one of the most difficult places on earth to maintain that balance. The more we are surrounded by the big city living, the more difficult it is to sustain that healthy balance, because we need the nature, we need the fresh air, we need a good diet, we need grounding. We need so many natural things in order to keep us natural, in order to keep our bodies working naturally. And over the years, it's been shown that the average control pause among people in general has been going down each year, and especially in big cities. So the problem is when we are constantly stressed out and not supporting a good diet and not exercising enough, of course, our bodies are going to be depleted of nutrients, but also depleted of oxygen, because the more stressed out we are, the more physically ill we are, the more heavily we're going to start breathing, because our bodies are trying to compensate for it with more oxygen. But the problem is the body forgets how to deliver that oxygen. So when we create the balance of CO2 in the body, The CO2 molecule allows the hemoglobin to release those oxygen molecules from the red blood cells to the rest of the body. And if that doesn't happen, we can breathe a lot and we can overfill our blood with oxygen. And in fact, when we measure the blood oxygen, it's going to show pretty high, but not much of that oxygen is going to be getting into our organs because there is not enough CO2. So when we train the body to not breathe so much, it will on its own create that balance and create that effective delivery system of taking the oxygen molecules from the lungs and delivering it and releasing it to the rest of the cells. And that is essential for a healthy brain function, which is directly associated with anxiety and being burned out and overworked and just simply losing balance in your life. So for me, the simple understanding of bringing enough oxygen to your brain, and there are so many other methods of doing it, but this is something that you can do on your own in any situation, on the go, in a hotel, in your bedroom, in the office, anywhere. You can do it in order to improve your brain function and your heart function. And that creates a better balance between the two main organs of our bodies and improves the function of every single part of the body as well.
It's really incredible. And so ultimately, by increasing our blood CO2, we are sending a signal to the hemoglobin that it's okay. You can release some of those oxygen molecules. We can release that oxygen into your vital organs, your muscles, all of the areas that then ultimately we feel less stressed because we feel more capable. You know, our muscles are more capable. Our brain is more capable. And just having a more capable brain that has increased cerebral blood flow and oxygenation, I mean, if our cognition is there, then we can do anything. You know, if your mind is there, then your body will follow. You know, and I think that's something that's so amazing about the work that you do. It's really, really incredible. So if you were to walk us through one exercise right now, just a breath work exercise that you perform on, you know, on your women who have experienced burnout. You know, maybe it's just a beginning exercise because this is something that our listeners and our viewers will follow at home. Could you guide us through an exercise?
I would absolutely love to, but everybody is on different levels. So in order to begin any breath hold exercises, that's a lot more complicated, and it's got to be done on more of a personal level. But as I mentioned before, I incorporated heart math into my practices. And that has been another shifting point for me because that's where the true coherence between our two main organs, the brain and the heart, was created. And for me, that has been the second life-changing tool. And it also incorporates the breath. It also helps you calm down your breath and also connect into your inner wisdom, into your intuition. And how amazing is that for women to get back into our biggest strength, our internal wisdom, because we have been trained to be overly logical and kind of neglect our right brain hemisphere that is responsible for creativity and connection to our heart and connection into our deep wisdom. So, if you don't mind, the heart math, I think is going to be a lot more relevant for pretty much anybody. And this is something that you can use on the go in your office before an important meeting or in those situations when you feel overwhelmed and you've got that feeling of, like you want to sigh, you know, release all that tension. You want to release that burnout and frustration. But instead of sighing, in fact, sighing releases too much carbon dioxide when it's done on a negative end. So instead of doing that, or right after you sigh and you realize that, perform this heart math technique. And it's so simple, but it's extremely powerful. So the more you practice it, the more you will feel the results. And in order to deliver the message correctly, I'm actually going to read it out to you exactly as they put it, because they put a lot of emphasis into every single word that they provide. So first I'm going to read out the steps to you, and then I'll actually do like a mini meditation with you. So first, you're going to focus your attention in the area of your heart. And it's okay to put your hand on the heart as well if that creates a better connection for you. And you're going to imagine your breath that is flowing in and out of your heart or chest area, breathing a little slower and deeper than usual. And you can take a breath in for 5 seconds and exhale for 5 seconds, or whatever feels comfortable to you. And then with each breath, you're going to draw in the feeling of inner ease to balance your mental and emotional energy. And the final step is you're going to set a meaningful intent to anchor the feeling of inner ease as you engage in your projects, challenges, or daily interactions. So now we're actually going to practice it together. Sit down and relax. And it's a good idea to put your hand on your heart and close your eyes. After some practice, you won't even need to do it because you will know that feeling and you can generate it automatically without even people knowing about it. And focus your attention in the area of your heart. Imagine your breath is flowing in and out of your heart or chest area, breathing a little slower and deeper than usual. With each breath, draw in the feeling of inner ease to balance your mental and emotional energy. And now set a meaningful intent to anchor the feeling of inner ease as you engage in your projects, challenges, or daily interactions. So would you like to share how you're feeling now?
Very, very relaxed, very focused. I love the focus on putting the hands on the heart and inhaling with a certain emotion and exhaling other emotions out. It's really wonderful, and I love that. And what I've heard about heart math is that ultimate heart coherency, that synchronicity that's happening, between the respiration and the heart, and that immediate slowing of the heart. And I think generally it's that 5 seconds in, 5 seconds out. And it's pretty immediately transformational. I mean, I can feel such an increase in that parasympathetic nervous system. I mean, I'm actually looking at my heart rate on my Apple Watch, and I can see that it went down about 5 beats. And it's really, it's really immediately effective. It's such a good one to practice at home, and especially and I like that you introduced that one, because you're right, that one is fantastic for a beginner. Don't start with breath retentions if you're a novice. I also have breath retentions in my program, and I always say, just slow your breathing down at first. Slow your breathing down. Focus on the fundamentals, and then when you become more advanced, breath retentions are wonderful and they have massive benefits for a huge population of individuals. But progress at the right rate. Mariya, thank you so much for being with us today. This was so incredibly informative. Please tell the audience where they can find you and what you're up to right now and how they can benefit from your teaching.
So you can find me on mariyanavitsky.com. I also have an Instagram and a TikTok at mariya.navitsky. And I always love to share helpful information. And at this point, I also have some free sessions going on. So if you would like to sign up, let me know. I am helping people create that coherence between the brain and the heart. And that works for anybody at any stage. And once again, the Buteyko method, the breath holds, and all that other great stuff that I'm incorporating into my trainings, that comes at a larger level, according to each person. Everybody is so different and everybody is at different stages. But this is something that you can do every single day for yourself to build up your resilience and feel better as you're going through stressful situations.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Mariya, for joining me today. I'm AJ of HYPOXiX.org. That's .org. Please join me and all the hypoxonauts at hypoxix.studio for live classes every week and sign up for the free 14-day program where you too can achieve inner altitude for a better life. Thank you, Mariya, and thank you so much to all of the listeners and all the viewers.
Thank you so much,
Have a great
AJ.
day.
Bye.
Bye-bye.